I'd like to draw your attention into one specific incident that Luke describes in his Gospel. So if you've got a Bible, if you'd like to open it at Luke chapter 8 and verse 22. Verse 22, we read that little section there, a very famous incident. One day Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and started out. As they sailed across, Jesus settled down. This is the New Living Translation. I love some of the colloquialisms that show up in here. Jesus settled down for a nap. Jesus goes to sleep in the boat. But soon a fierce storm came down on the lake. The boat was filling with water, and they were in real danger. The disciples went and woke him up, shouting, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the raging waves. Suddenly the storm stopped and all was calm. Then he asked them, "Where is your faith?" The disciples were terrified and amazed. "Who is this man?" they asked each other. When he gives a command, even the wind and waves obey him. Very famous incident. There's a couple of amazing incidents on Lake Galilee, aren't there? So there's the occasion when Jesus walks across on the water, and Peter goes to join him, and Jesus has to rescue Peter because Peter is all right as long as he's looking at Jesus, but gets distracted by the waves around him and begins to sink, and Jesus lifts him up and brings him to the boat. There's the occasions when Jesus instructs the disciples to go and fish again when they failed to catch all night. One incident during his lifetime, during his ministry, around about the time that he's calling them to be his disciples, and of course the other one after his resurrection that's described at the end of John's Gospel. Well, here Jesus is crossing Lake Galilee. We're into the second part of Luke 8, so we've been learning about what it means to hear and to understand and to obey. And then Jesus is crossing the lake. He's going to the region of the Gerasenes, we'll find out a bit later on. And he's got a specific appointment there, it seems, that he's going intentionally to meet a man who is demon possessed. They get into the boat. This is might be one of the boats that the fishermen disciples, owned, or it might be one that they've just borrowed for the purpose. But he would have had with him seasoned sailors who knew the lake well, knew what they were doing, were used to the weather, were used to sailing in storms. And as they go across the lake, Jesus settles down and goes to sleep down in the boat. And then a storm breaks. And it's such a fierce storm, the boat is beginning to get waterlogged as the waves and the rain batter it. There's a real danger that it's going to sink. And the disciples are afraid. And you might say, well, not without good reason. They know the lake. The fishermen, at least, are used to it, but there seems to be something beyond what they're used to. And there is real danger there. Jesus is sleeping. And there's a sense of him being at peace, calm in the midst of the storm. They wake him up. We're going to drown. What we're going to do? Now, one of the things you will spot here is the echoes back to the prophet Jonah in the Old Testament. Remember, Jonah is ordered, instructed by God, commissioned by God to go and preach to the Ninevites. But he goes in the opposite direction and gets on a boat, sails away from where he's meant to be, from Joppa to Tarshish. Now, a lot of sort of children's versions of the story make this big thing about him being a stowaway. I'm not sure when you read Jonah that that's particularly something that's suggested. The point is not that he hides, stows away, but that he's running away from God. And there he is in the boat, going down into the boat and sleeping in the storm, and he has to be woken up as well. And of course, the focus will be on Jonah, and it's Jonah's response, Jonah's words, the actions surrounding him as Jonah says, you need to throw me into the water, that brings this calm, this peace, because it is God that has sent that particular storm. Similarities. We are meant to remember that and to see how Jonah is a type of Christ, one that foreshadows, points forward to what Christ will do. That as Jonah goes into the water, in effect offering up his life to bring peace, to save the others, so Jesus will die and rise to bring salvation. But because Jesus is the true and better Jonah, for as many similarities as there are, for as many echoes as there are, there's also the important, crucial differences. Jesus is not running away from God's mission. He's going directly on it. It is very clear that this is not God sending the storm to prevent him, to hinder him, to judge him. There's been discussion and speculation about whether this is something more than a natural storm, whether there's demonic activity, particularly because of Jesus addressing the storm and because of the level of fear the disciples have. That's not said. We should be careful about speculation. I think just stick with the fact that there is this incredibly severe storm that endangers lives and puts the mission at risk. That's enough. Jesus is heading towards the very man that he needs to speak to, and not running away. And Jesus, therefore, not being to blame for the storm, Jesus doesn't ask for drastic action from them. Rather, Jesus himself simply gets up, speaks, addresses the wind and the waves, and tells them to be still and be quiet. And they are. And then the outcome of this, I think that the lessons that Luke wants us to draw out are this. First of all, Jesus challenges the disciples. Where is your faith? That's not to belittle the danger of the situation. It's not to say that they were cowards in terms of the weather, that they shouldn't have been afraid it was just a little storm. No, it's not to belittle the circumstances, but it is to maximize the power and authority that Jesus has. The question is not, why are you all over the place? Why are you afraid of the storm? The question is, why didn't you trust me? Have you not already seen the authority, the power, and the compassion that I have? Do you not know something about who I am? Is God the Father going to let Jesus, his chosen Messiah, perish in a boat in the middle of Galilee? And there, I believe, is the crucial, vital message for you and me, the crucial challenge. Where is our faith? Are we trusting Jesus? And to say again, that is not to belittle our circumstances, the storm that you or I might find ourselves in at any time, but it is to heighten our sense of trust in Jesus. The other lesson that we see is this: the disciples are left asking, who is this man that the storm, that the wind, the waves, that the nature itself must obey him? Nature hears and obeys. And of course, if the challenge at the start of the chapter has been through parables and proverbial teaching, will we not just be listeners but doers as well? Will we hear and obey? Well, in the second half of the chapters, we'll see more in the next session. We've got this big emphasis on hearing and obeying, and the authority that Jesus has. So Jesus is going across. There's a demon-possessed man. After that, he is going to heal a woman, and he's going to raise from the dead a young girl. So the weather, spiritual forces, natural forces and supernatural forces, sickness, and even death itself must hear and obey Jesus. That's where we're going here. And that is going to help us answer the question, who is this man? We'll talk about that more in the next session. That this is not just a focus on, by the way, that we'll see then that it is not just he's God. There's also something about his humanity as well as his deity here, but more of that next time. We will be seeing who Jesus is. And the crucial thing is this: that this man, this person, Jesus, is the one that we need to hear and obey and trust.